Hi, everybody. Welcome to this talk. I hope you all are staying safe and healthy during this time. I want to talk a bit about the relational nature of shame, which I'll be exploring next week in an extensive workshop. So this is kind of a little introduction to that. Um, I got really intrigued about how shame lives in the body. It's often thought of as an emotion, which it is, right? And there are beliefs that go along with it. Um, but the way we can often notice it is by tracking the body, because our bodies will take on that attitude of shame. Like maybe we'll pull in, or maybe we'll duck our head, or maybe we'll look down, maybe we'll fidget. There are all kinds of indicators in the body of shame. And the reason I think that that is so important, one of the reasons, is that clients will rarely come to therapy and say, I want to work with shame. Now, why is that? It's because shame has to do with feelings that something is wrong with us, something is bad. It can't be healed, or it can't be amended because it has to do with the very nature of who we are. That's what shame feels like. We're worthless. We have no value, et cetera, et cetera. And that's very different from guilt. Guilt, I think of guilt as about the action that we did. Like if I did something I'm not proud of, I can feel guilty about that. But guilt can motivate me to make amends, to remedy it. And that way it increases connection with others. Um, Shame is different. With shame, there's not a possibility to remedy it because it's about who we are. And that's one of the reasons it's so good to have the body as an access route. Now, shame has many, many disguises. It might be disguised as workaholism, as perfectionism, as withdrawal, as an addiction. It probably has a million different kinds of disguises. Yeah. But when we recognize how the body takes it on, then we can start to work with it. So, another reason that's so critical is that shame can start very early, pre-verbally. It's often early shame, and chronic shame can be connected with early caregiving ways that our early caregivers treated us that we can't make sense out of. And so we take it on ourselves. I'm bad. There's something wrong. I'm not right. And our bodies will reflect that. You see this in little infants even, how their bodies pull in, or they look down and away and collapse and give up. And those patterns are reflected in our present day clients. Other sources of shame that I'm really interested in right now, especially given the political climate, is the shame that's connected with sort of systemic oppression and the dynamics of privilege and oppression. You know, there's so much literature about the transgenerational transmission of trauma. And I think that is important to consider in terms of privilege and oppression, not only for the victims, for people of color, for example, indigenous peoples, but also the transgenerational transmission for those who have the privilege, and the atrocities that our ancestors committed towards indigenous peoples and slavery. And there's many manifestations of this with colonization. for example, there's a lot of new literature on PTSD, connecting PTSD with what's called moral injury of veterans who have so much shame for what they've done. And because it doesn't fit with their values. And I think this is a root of shame that we also need to face. You know? So when we track how it lives in the body, then we can start working with it in a couple different ways. One is we can start resourcing it. For example, if somebody's posture is collapsed and they just feel so terrible and so ashamed of themselves, we can start resourcing it by lengthening the spine. Because you see, this posture of a lengthened spine, of and even a movement, it's incompatible with shame. So when we're looking at resourcing shame, we're looking for that client. What physical movement or posture is incompatible with that sense of shame? So aligning the spine, if somebody's pulled in, an expansive movement. If somebody is pulling back, a forward movement. If somebody's shoulders are up, dropping the shoulders, we find the way to live in the body that is incompatible with shame. And that can be a great, great resource. Now, but that's different from processing the shame. Processing the shame is when we discover the parts that hold the shame and the other parts that judge it, the other parts that try to override it. And we work through the body to really heal the part that has that holds the shame. I remember working with one client, for example, who she was so ashamed of something that she had done. And she felt the shame part in her chest, in her heart. Because I asked her, well, how do you sense that shame part of you, the part that's so ashamed? And then I asked her if she could contact that part with her hands, placing her hands on her chest. And at first, she said, it's dead. I think I killed it because I never want to do something like that again. And at first, she couldn't feel her contact with her own hands, with where the shame lived in her body. But so we worked with that. We worked with the part that was judging, the part that killed off the shame, and the part that was ashamed, until she could really feel a compassionate connection in her body with her heart and the part that was so ashamed. But it was very much a bodily experience that healed it. And then she said, now I can feel my body. I can inhabit my body in a whole different way that she hadn't really felt for years. And this is what happens when we push parts of ourselves away. We stop being fully alive and fully present. And that happens with so much with shame. We'll push that part away, and we'll push it away physically. Yeah. So because shame is a relational phenomena, it happens with caregivers. It happens in society as well with what many people call misrecognition. I love that term, because think of it this way: when somebody recognizes us, we feel seen, we feel heard, we feel like I'm accepted, yeah, and then our body's open. There's so much misrecognition that goes on, both from attachment figures, people that we love, where we don't feel that we're seeing clearly, but also societally. Charles Taylor. I think he's a philosopher, and he's written a lot on recognition and social justice. And he talks about when whole societies misrecognize a group of people in it. So you see them inaccurately, you see them as violent, or you see them as lazy, or you see them as dirty, or whatever it is. And these are stereotypes that still live in our society. That societal misrecognition needs to be healed as well, because that can have a huge impact on the person and the group that is misrecognized. So it's very critical to explore the individual roots of shame and how it lives in the body, both for those who suffer the effects of shame, but also for those who inflict shame. You know, this is one of the biggest defenses against shame, is to project it out on the others. We see this so often, where someone will shame, say insulting things about somebody else, to project their own feeling of shame outward. So that's also very much of a physical phenomena. I remember working with someone who's he was mobilized upward like this, and there was this blaming towards everybody, right? And what he realized in the course of therapy was that this upward mobility kept him away from the parts of him that were so ashamed inside. He tried to rise above it and put it outward instead of owning it and connecting with that very vulnerable shame that he felt inside of himself. So we're going to, one of the things that I like to look at as well is how trauma so many people are ashamed around trauma, both because they weren't able to protect themselves and defend themselves, because they think they brought it on themselves, they think they should have gotten away, and also the perpetrators. There's so much shame for what they've done. Way back when I was young, learning to be a therapist, I was working as a counselor in a women's prison who had done, some of my clients had, committed murders, et cetera, et cetera. And I always found there were two parts of them. There was one part that was ashamed of what they had done, but another part that was like, I had no other choice, which was, I could see their point in that as well. But it's a misconception to think that those who have inflicted insults and shame don't have shame inside themselves, because they do, right? So again, working through the body, we can start to help a person find ways of living in the body that gives them more resources for the shame and capabilities of dealing with it. And but we can also work through the body to process the shame, so it can really, the parts that are so ashamed can be healed on cognitive, emotional, and physical levels. And then that helps us get out of that cycle, where a thought like, oh, I'm so bad, leads to the emotion of, oh, I'm so ashamed. It leads to the body posture, leads to more thoughts, I don't have a right to be here, more shame, and more body posture. That cycle starts to be disrupted when we're working through the body. And that's what we want to first disrupt the cycle, and then start to really heal those shame parts. And what what we find with that is that clients will start to live in the body in a different way. Like, I often think the antidote to shame is just a healthy sense of pride. Not the kind of pride that says, I'm better than everybody, but the kind of pride that says, I'm okay. I deserve to be here. I'm fine as I am. Sure, I've got things to work on, but basically I'm an okay person. That kind of pride, you'll start to see your clients shift. It's so beautiful to watch this little opening, this little lift of the chin when it used to be down, or when somebody's in that, more aggressive rising above the shame, a drop of the chin that is a healthy sense of self, a healthy pride. Yeah. So these are the things we're going to go to in depth next week in the workshop. Thanks so much for listening. Stay safe wherever you are, and all the best. Okay, bye-bye.